We can go across to John Curtice, Professor of Politics at the University of Strathclyde. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. I hope you can hear me this time around. How damaging is the Attorney General's assessment for Theresa May?
There is no doubt that it's deeply damaging. What Theresa May needed today in the wake of the agreement that was unveiled in Strasbourg late last night, is she needed a number of ducks to fall in her direction. She needed the Attorney General to reverse his legal advice of January and to say that he did not think that for any longer it would be possible for the UK to be left in the Northern Ireland backstop against its will. But although the Attorney General has come to the view that the risk of that happening is reduced, and frankly he thinks that in practical terms the risk is not that great, he is still accepting that in particular, if simply the European Union and the UK, as we go into the phase 2 of the negotiations, they're trying to negotiate the future trade relationship, simply can't come to an agreement and the Northern Ireland backstop is invoked, then the UK would struggle to get out until we eventually had reached a trade deal with which the European Union and the UK were both happy. So that's the first duck that's failed to follow. The second duck that he needed, the Prime Minister needed, was that the European Research Group, that's the group of hardline Tory Brexiteers, who had a group of lawyers looking over this themselves, another bunch of lawyers, they have also said that they don't think this is enough of a change, and they're also saying that they don't think that they can support it. They also need the DUP, the Northern Ireland Unionists. We're not entirely clear where they are yet, but Nigel Dodds was amongst that group of ERG lawyers who said they don't think it's good enough. Against that backdrop, yes, probably the Prime Minister, given that the risks of the UK being left in the Northern Ireland backstop against its will appear to be reduced, that the vote against will be lower than it was in January. But the truth is that even if half of those Conservative MPs who voted against in January now change their minds, the Prime Minister could still find herself losing by 100 or so. And if that is the figure that emerges at 7 o'clock this evening, British time, I think in truth we probably have to say that the deal is dead, and both the UK and the European Union is going to have to work out where we go from here in what is now a very short space of time between now and the 29th of March.
Now, we have the Prime Minister, Theresa May, who is set to address lawmakers later on today. Whatever she says, will it be sufficient to sway those sitting on the fence?
Well, I mean, she will do her best, is the honest truth. And I think in particular, ultimately, the government's appeal to those who are, in favour of leaving the European Union but are concerned about the backstop is simply to say, look, if you don't vote for this evening, then there is a serious risk that Brexit will not happen at all. And certainly, I think everybody would now agree is that if the deal is defeated heavily, then the truth is that probably we are talking about a relatively long extension to the negotiations. We are then talking about a period where we're no longer quite entirely sure about what the future of the UK government is. We're certainly not clear about what kind of Brexit the House of Commons might be willing to vote for.
But it's an extension on Article 50 that the European Union, the other 27 members, will need to sign off on.
Of course, but I mean, look, it is no secret that in exactly the same way as the United Kingdom doesn't want to leave without a deal, equally the European Union also does not want the United Kingdom to leave without a deal. That's one thing on which they both agree. And at the end of the day, it will be in the European Union's interests to facilitate an extension if it looks as a result that the outcome at minimum will be no worse from the European Union's point of view than the deal that we currently have, and perhaps will pave the way either towards a softer Brexit, with perhaps the UK having a relationship with the European Union not dissimilar to that to Norway, and maybe, who knows, still leaves open perhaps the remote possibility that the UK might change its mind. And that, at the end of the day, is the decision above all that the European Union would like us to take.
But, I mean, there are just 17 days to go until Brexit, and we still don't know what's going to happen between now and the 29th of March, essentially.
Well, I think, no, let's play the choreography here. I mean, it's pretty clear we already, if indeed the government loses tonight, then they've promised the House of Commons it will have a vote tomorrow on whether or not it's willing to leave the EU without a deal. We're pretty clear that MPs won't vote for that. That will then take us to Thursday, in which there will be a vote on whether or not the government should seek an extension to Article 50. What we'll then be also looking for is what also happens on Thursday. It is probably on Thursday that amendments will be put down that might pave the way for the House of Commons to try to be able to express its view as to what kind of deal it might be willing to vote for, and perhaps that might provide the basis on which Theresa May might then be able to write to the European Union and say, look, well, actually, this deal I negotiated with you, sorry, we don't want it, but maybe we could have one like this. But of course, the question we'll then be asking ourselves at that point is, how much longer can Theresa May remain as Prime Minister? And indeed, is it going to be possible for this Conservative government to continue running the country if indeed the party ends up being split, which certainly is a risk in the light of what we're at the moment expecting could well happen this evening.
Now, the EU Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker made quite clear on Monday that these extra assurances which the European Union has provided is a second chance. There won't be a third chance, he said. Surely, die-hard Brexiters must know the European Union is not going to give the UK a deal where it doesn't have the upper hand. It's logical.
Well, you have to remember that many of those who are in that camp at the end of the day would be content for the United Kingdom to leave without a deal. And there is, by the way, that now also a rather interesting potential coalition of people who are in favour of perhaps having a very long extension. A very long extension from the European Union's point of view would be a way of getting around the Northern Ireland backstop, because if indeed we now have a long extension, we're going to, I think, in practice to be moving into a situation where, although the UK is a member of the European Union, that actually we will be negotiating our long-term relationship when we leave the European Union, even though that's what the European Union originally wanted to avoid. The one way of solving the Northern Ireland backstop is to actually negotiate the future relationship. Therefore, we won't need the backstop. So there's a coalition there, and the European Union might be hoping that we're in favour of a softer Brexit than is currently envisaged by the current government. But equally, on the other end of the spectrum, some of those who are hard Brexiteers are saying to themselves, well, if we now have a very long extension, what we will then be able to do is, if indeed we cannot negotiate a satisfactory long-term relationship with the European Union, we can make sure that the United Kingdom really is ready to leave without a deal, and that therefore we'll be in a stronger position. So there may be a very strange coalition here of those who are keenest on having a softer Brexit and those who actually are quite willing to leave without a deal, both coming together behind the idea, well, actually, maybe we need to play this as a much longer game.
We'll see what happens. John Curtice, thank you very much for joining us on the program today.